What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on Patrick's 3rd gen Tacoma here. We're going to be installing the brand new Airaid Snorkel that you guys see here. This is a pretty new, very sleek design, and it's one of the better looking snorkels that we've seen. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the install. So first step, what we're going to do is we are going to be disconnecting the negative cable. So we'll just loosen that with a 10mm, and then we will just pop that off. We'll just set it down to the side so that way it doesn't come back and reattach itself. Next step, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be taking off this engine cover, just lift it up from the front, and we're just going to remove it from the engine bay. Next, what we're doing is we're going to be disconnecting the mass airflow sensor, and then we're going to be unhooking the wiring harness from the air filter housing, and then that way we have full access to take this out. Next, we are going to be disconnecting the vent line, which is here, that is attached to the intake tube, and then we're going to loosen the clamps, which is this one here with an 8mm, and we're going to be loosening this other one over here, which is also an 8mm. Then we're going to be removing this whole tube from the engine bay. And if there is the harness still, go ahead and squeeze that. It's going to be underneath this part here. So what we'll need is this pair of needle nose, squeeze that and push it through. Then we can take this part out. Next, we're going to be taking 2 bolts down here, but Patrick has his bumper cut, so we're going to show you guys on this vehicle here. So the 2 bolts are going to be right there and at the very corner right here. So we're going to loosen those 2 out, that way we have access to underneath there. Next, we're going to be taking off these clips, that way we can take the lid off. Then we're going to be removing the air filter as well, so we're going to pull that out. Next step, we're going to be removing these 3 bolts from the bottom filter, and they're going to be 12mm. So these are the holes that those bolts were in. 2 of them were inside the housing, and then the last one is just on the outside of it, closer to the firewall. Next, if you guys have mud flaps, you're going to be taking that off of there, but since we don't, we skip this step. Next step here, if you guys have a TRD Sport, TRD Off-Road, TRD Pro, you guys will have the fender flares. Some SR5s will have it, but what we're going to do, we're going to be taking off these 10mm bolts that are underneath the fender flare. Next, we're going to be pulling the fender flare back, and since Patrick doesn't have his fender liners underneath, it makes it a little bit easier for us. So back behind the fender flare, there are a couple tabs that you do need to pinch and kind of pull back. There's this front one, that black one there, and then the rest are going to be these blue and orange clips. And if you do end up breaking any of them, the nice thing about this kit is they do provide replacements for all of them. Next step, we're going to have to take 2 screws out, but it doesn't look like Patrick has them to begin with. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to cut those 2 with side cutters. Just get right underneath them, cut them, and then we'll just push them through, and then those will fall out a little bit later. Once you have those 2 out, we won't be needing those again, and they do come with replacements, so that way we can put the liner back in later. So this is the template we're going to be using. So it shows the fender, the hood edge, the body line, and all of that. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut this along the line and then we'll line it up with the hood. So we just realized our template is a little bit messed up because they printed it on the back of the other template. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna put this side where it says Fender and the door edge on the door edge. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna use this line where we're supposed to cut. We're just gonna mark it down here. That way we kind of know where to start. And then we'll flip it over to the other template, line that up with the other line it up with the fender and hood edge and the body lines right there and there, and then we're going to tape this one down because this is the one that we're going to be actually drilling from. Next step, we're going to be using a center punch tool. We're going to mark the 4 holes that are on here. And then the very middle. There we go. So we're going to be using that as the guide to drill these holes out to the 1/2-inch holes that we need. Once you have those holes punched, you can go ahead and take the template off. So what we're doing now is we're drilling a 1/8-inch pallet hole through each of the center punch holes that we did just recently. Next, we're going to be drilling the 3 outer holes to a 1/2-inch size. Then we will go ahead and do the center hole with a 4-inch hole saw. Alright, so what we're going to be doing now, we got our 4-inch hole saw here with our 1/8-inch pallet drill into the 1/8-inch pallet hole that we drilled. We're going to just knock her down. Ta-da! Very nice, clean hole. So this step isn't needed, but what we're doing is we're just going around and just cleaning it up a little bit, making sure there's no sharp edges and everything is nice. Alright, since we have the hole cut down to the metal, what we're going to do now is we're going to apply a little bit of touch-up paint. So luckily we got pretty much every color here, so we're going to apply a little bit of quicksand touch-up paint to the inside where there is down to the bare metal. That way it prevents as much rust or corrosion as we can. Next, we're going to be working on the roof here. So on the roof you'll have this weather strip that we will just pry just like that and just move it out of the way, so we're not going to completely take it off. So on the bottom it just has a little bit of double-sided tape down there, and what we're doing now is we're cutting into this factory tape that you guys have up here. That's just going to allow us to have access to the nut that's underneath it. Next step, we are going to be applying some of this thread locker to the hardware that are provided. So we got some on there already, so we're getting ready to install this bracket on the roof. So we'll bring that up, and then we'll just go ahead and thread it into the holes that we kind of punched out earlier with our razor. And then we'll just tighten it down all the way. And if we need to later, we can probably just loosen it and adjust if we need it. Next, what we're doing is we are laying the weather strip back down, and we got a razor out. What we're doing now is we're just notching a little part of it, so that way the weather strip can still lay down completely flat once we have the weather strip back in place. So this is what ours looks like after we notched it out, so that way this weather strip can just lay flat just like it did before. Next, we're going to be peeling off the paper backing on the foam piece here, and then we're going to be applying it right onto the back side of the snorkel. And there are 3 pre-drilled or pre-cut holes, and we're just going to make sure all the nut zerts are shown through it, and then we'll just lay that all the way down and make sure that it's making good contact. Next, we're going to be applying these studs onto the nut zerts on the back of the snorkel, and just thread it all the way down until it stops on all 3. Now we are moving the snorkel onto the fender. Put the hole in, line everything up with the fender side, and then we're going to come up here where we installed the mounting bracket. Now go ahead and line up the bracket with the snorkel, and there are nut zerts in that as well, and just go ahead and line that up and install the hardware provided. Next, what we did is we pulled back the fender liner so that way we can get to those studs that we installed on the bottom of the snorkel. So we're going to be using these rubber washers along with the metal ones, and then 3 nuts. So we're going to install the rubber washers first, followed by the metal, and then the nut. So it's gonna be hard to see up there, but you guys saw the studs, what they look like from the back of that. So just reach up in there, put the rubber washer in, this metal one, and then the nut, and then just go ahead and tighten them all the way down. Alright, so you guys can kind of see what it looks like in there now. So the bottom 2 we're going to be able to get with a socket, but the top one we'll probably have to use a wrench for that one. So we'll go ahead and tighten it down. Next, we install this clamp onto the snorkel head, and what we're going to do is we're going to move this up to the top of the snorkel, and then we're going to set it right on there, just like that, and then we will go ahead and tighten that clamp just to make sure that it's fully secured. Next, we're going to be installing this flexible duct here. So we got a hose clamp already on the round side. This side is bigger and it's slightly oval. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in there. We're going to fit that around the circle part that's on the back side of the snorkel here. And then on the other end, it's actually going to come out that hole right there, and that's gonna mate with the factory airbox. So we're just gonna adjust it until we get a good fitment, and then we'll tighten that clamp on the back side. Now we are just putting all of the fender liner back in. Then we're going to be replacing any of these broken clips, and then these ones down here that we cut off with the side cutters, you can replace those. Those are also included. Once these are all replaced, the black clips are installed, you can go ahead and reinstall your fender flare. And if you really want to, you could replace the tape that is on the top there. We're not going to, but you can, since Patrick didn't really want to do that. But if it was my truck and I want to close this gap up as tight as possible, I probably would replace that. But if we were doing this for a customer, we would replace that as well. Lastly, install those bolts that are down here if you guys do not have the viper cut, but obviously we do, so we don't have to reinstall that. Next, we're going to be reinstalling the factory airbox, or the low part of it at least. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this front part of it, take it off. We're just going to pry it from underneath on both sides. We're going to pop that off. Next, we're going to be installing the clamp that is provided onto that duct that is in the fender. Then we will move the lower portion of the factory box into that hole. Then go ahead and tighten that clamp. In the instructions, it does say if you need to remove that washer fluid reservoir just to get easier access, you can do that as well. Then go ahead and install the factory bolts that hold down the bottom and tighten it all the way down. Then go ahead and put the filter back in, and then the upper part of the housing. Then go ahead and reinstall the factory intake tube. Then go ahead and secure the clamps down. Then go ahead and reconnect the vent line. Put the clamp on that. Then back here for the harness, we will reconnect that part to the underside of this box here. It's kind of hard to see, but you know, you have to unclip that at the beginning. So, and then go ahead and clamp that back on, plug the sensor back in. Lastly, we will put the cover back on, and then we are all done. All right, so there we have it. The new Airaid Snorkel was installed. I really like how low profile it is and how it hugs the body real tight, and it stays narrow, and the head is adjustable, so in the weather or in the winter you can swap that around, or in the rain you can swap that around so it doesn't get all the water in there. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for this video. We will have this snorkel down in the description. As always, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and if you guys are not subscribed, consider subscribing. Turn on that bell notification, that way you guys get notified every time we post a new video, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.